So for more than 30 years, Autocar has been deciding what is the best new sports car launched that year. So join me, the 11 cars we have here, last year's winner plus 10 all new ones, as we decide what is Britain's best driver's car of 2022.
So how this works is that a bunch of colleagues and I drive the very best sports cars launched this year, and we each allocate a score to see which one we like best. This is positions 11 through to 6. Now the top 5, including the winner, will be in a second video, part 2 of this feature, next week.
So this is a Morgan Super 3. I love this car. It's just a bundle of joy. Doesn't take itself too seriously, but at the same time it does feel properly put together, nicely engineered. It's got a little Ford 3-cylinder engine in the front, driving a single rear wheel, and then you get the choice. Do you go all arms out, or do you sort of go a bit easier with your arm in? Probably easier with the arm in. In this company, it is not fast. But does that matter? No. Mind you, I mean, it's still doing 70, 80 miles an hour, still pulling. I mean, it's a wild old thing. I love this as a road car. It's probably my favourite road car of the year. Just see those wheels change direction as you do, sort of take shelter behind the little screen. It's not a serious car, but does move around on the throttle a little bit. It's been up on 2 wheels now and again today, apparently. You do have to just manage the weight ever so slightly. Not a natural track car, but that doesn't mean it isn't a whole lot of fun on circuit. So there's a little bit of throttle adjustability. I think it will do sort of donuts and stuff at low speed. I mean, if we're being brutally honest, and we probably should be, as a track car, it is not the last word in things, but do not take that away from it. I wish you could see inside this helmet, because my resting bitch face has become a broad beaming smile. I'm not sure this car's going to win. And if we were talking about the last word in ultimate handling dynamics, you know, Porsche engineers who've worked on the GT3 or GT4 RS will sort of drive it and have a laugh and quite enjoy it, but let's not kid ourselves that it is a GT Porsche sort of rival. But it's just huge fun. It's just huge fun. And ultimately, for me, that's what drivers' cars are all about. Getting out with a big grin. And this car makes me do that. Just makes me do that. It is actually much better sorted than you would think. It's silly. It's a fun machine. It is not a serious driver's car, but it's just such a giggle. It's an absolute giggle, but it's actually really good. It's objectively, it steers very nicely. Throttle response is good. Gear shift is fine. It's an MX-5 gearbox. The balance is good. It doesn't oversteer. It doesn't understeer too much. Doesn't oversteer too much. It hangs together as a piece of engineering remarkably well. It's also a fun factory. I bloody love it. What a car. What a great, 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 great car. So I suppose the BMW M240i's remit is not too dissimilar to the Toyota GR86's. It's front-engined, rear-wheel drive coupe that will seat 4, nice on road, okay on track. I mean, I'm not sure that... Well, it's got an M badge on it, even if it's not a full house M, you know, it does have an M badge on it. So, you know, should it be okay on a circuit? It feels a heavier car than the Toyota. I mean, it probably is, because it's got a 6-cylinder in the nose rather than a 4. With an 8-speed automatic. It's a smoother, more lusty engine. Body control is not as tight. It doesn't turn in as crisply as the Toyota. Hangs on pretty gamely. I mean, it's a quicker car. You've got to manage the nose more carefully, and then it does move around a bit. Right, quite nice actually. But it does it with a softness to it that is agreeable. You can just sort of lean on it. You just build up to it and lean on it. The engine's very smooth, quite quiet. I mean, it ran into the limiter at sort of 6.8 then without me almost knowing about it. And then once you get it planted at the front end, you can just play some games with the rear. It is not as much fun to do that with as the Toyota, I don't think. But it is a capable, entertaining car. I mean, every car that we sort of invite to take part in this contest every year is one of the best drivers' cars we've driven this year. So there is an expectation, you know, even if it doesn't appear at the top order of these rankings, it's still a really good car, still a really entertaining car, and this is good, this is entertaining. I'm not sure it is the last word in absolute precision, but it's a comfortable road car, it's got a nice interior, there is an awful lot to be said for it, and if it's not the sharpest thing, well, it's not an M2. That will be coming soon. We'll bring you a test of it when it does. Meantime, this is a nice way to spend time. So to the Aston Martin DBX 707, so called because it's got a mighty engine, but it is a mighty car. You suddenly feel very much higher than in everything else, in weird fashion, and it is a bit tippy-toe. But it moves pretty fast. That was fourth gear from low revs, and it just pulled straight through to 90 miles an hour just like that. It is absurdly rapid. And I feel a bit funny about sports SUVs, performance car SUVs. I think, well, you know, if you wanted a performance car, I wouldn't have started with an SUV. But, all right, fine. I get what they're trying to do. People will buy it. So let's see what it is like. It just cuts in the stability control there. Did not like that very much. So let's try turning that out and see what we get in. Oh! And immediately it feels like it wants to move around a little bit. Quite a lot. Well, this is ridiculous. So I have a colleague who got out of this car earlier, Andrew Frankel, senior contributing writer to the Autocar, and he said, and I like this phrase very much, so I'm going to steal it, sorry Andrew, he said, it's got sort of dancing bear syndrome. It's not the quality of the dance, it's the fact that it's prepared to do it at all. And there is absolutely something about that. There are other cars here that will grip better, drift better, steer better, handle better, but the fact is they don't sit you this far off the ground, and also have some degree of off-road ability. And also what this car does is have a fantastic road cruising ability. It's an amazingly refined, respectable, comfortable road car. You can sit on a motorway for 6-7 hours, yeah, no bother. It's got all of the things you want a big SUV to have, but it will also do this. And even if it's out of its depth would be a harsh thing to say, even if it's not a natural car to sit in this company, there is something to be said for the fact that it can do it at all. Now, I've got a lot of time for this, which is the Maserati MC20, because there are a lot of mid-engine supercars you can buy. Not only Ferrari, Lamborghini, McLaren, but now the Corvette is mid-engined, the Audi R8 is mid-engined, Aston Martin are going to launch a mid-engine car. There are loads, there'll be more I've forgotten as well, with the due apologies to all those manufacturers. So there's at least half a dozen mid-engined, £200,000 give or take, supercars, of which this is one. I really like the cut of its jib because it does stuff that others do not do. The steering is a bit too light. It's quite hyper off straight ahead. The engine really sings when you get up it. It's a V6. It's quite boosty. But whoever did this car, it feels not unlike a mid-engined supercar version of, say, the Alfa Giulia Quadrifoglio GTA. It's really fast. It's really fast, but it's got, on the road, it's quite, soft is the wrong word, but it's got quite a GT-ish, amiable mooch about it. But on a circuit, it's really quick. Yeah, the steering is a bit remote because it's so light. But when you get this car activated and energized, it's really capable, and it turns in really nicely. And then it moves around. Quite lively, but it moves around quite honestly. There's a real straightforward honesty that I don't want to say you don't get in a McLaren, but that feels a much more complex sort of car to get on top of. This is quite straightforward. It's quite old school in a way. You turn, it turns, you get on the power, the diff hooks up and it starts to move around. What more do you want? Now, some of our testers here find the steering is a bit too light. It doesn't quite give you enough back. I understand that. I don't think this car will split opinion in quite the same way as, say, the BMW M4 GTS did a few years ago. It's not that sort of car. We all like it. The question of where it comes in that sort of, I suspect the upper middle segment, is open to debate, but I really, really like it. I really enjoy it. And what I like about it most is just its, well, what it looks, I think it looks sensational. But two, it just has an old school charm to it. And a bit like the old Ferrari 488 F8, you know, you get to a corner, well, it's up to you. How sideways do you want it to go? You know, it's your choice. You can drive it precisely, or you can kick the tail sideways, and you can get on the road and it will do 300 miles home at the end of a long day, just mooching back in comfort and convenience. I've got so much time for this car. I think it's a real hit. I hope it does really well for Maserati, because it's the sort of car they should make, and it would be really nice if people would reward them by buying it. But there's a lot of mid-engine cars out there. It's got the sort of joy that a Toyota GR86 has. It's got that sort of demeanour. You know, you chuck it in, what do you want to do? How sideways do you want to go? Do you want to just drive it precisely through? Do you want to be a bit more leery? It's just a sense of fun to it. And then one button, it's back in drive. Stick it across back into GT. Yeah, now it's a very comfortable car to drive home in.
Upper middle, I thought. Well, 8th place, my colleagues thought. But remember, these are the best of the best, and it's no shame to be 8th in that company. Still, onwards.
Okay, so I'm going to start talking now, but this may be the last thing you hear about the Catering 420 Cup. So we'll use subtitles, if we have to. I mean, what a riot. It's got a sequential shift, so I don't have to use the clutch on upshifts. I do on downshifts with a throttle flip, just to smooth it out. I mean, it seems unfair, doesn't it, really? The car with 500 horsepower against a 2.5 ton TBX SUV. But that is the nature of things. This is a nice road car, yeah, in the Catering range, but heavy's fast steering, tyres are still cold, so they're building up a bit of grip, but they've got amazing grip from the start. Brake pedal is really nicely weighted and responsive, it's unassisted, then throttle flips are really easy, the throttle response is just fantastic, the gear shift is firm, but compactor on, forwards for down. Oh, what a hoot. It's got so much grip, so much precision. And it's properly fast. I think if you were doing long stints, you would want a pair of earplugs in. It's just unbelievably responsive and communicative. I mean, it's a Catering. What do you expect? You can just play games with it all day long, and because it's light, it's been on the same set of tyres all day, it's been on the same set of brakes all day. Steering is heavy, and okay, if you are looking for criticisms, this is a car whose basic design was crafted sort of throughout the 50s into the 60s and 70s. And as a result, the cabin is small because that gives a small frontal area. It's developed as a racing car. So, actually the transmission tunnel can slightly bulk you. You put your arms out here a bit. If you want more space inside a car like this, then something like an Ariel Atom is probably your better bet. Ariel finds that some of its customers have been to Catering, don't fit, and they go to aerial. But if you do fit, the footwell is also incredibly tight. I've got size 8 feet, and even then I have to be careful about which shoes I'm going to wear. Catering does offer a wide body in some models. Oh, it's just an absolute hoot though. This is the one car here I think you would be at a track all day. You could run it round knowing you're not going to wear anything out except yourself. You'd go out, you'd have short stints, 10-15 minutes, get exhausted, come back in, cup of tea, have a think about life, go back out, be one of the fastest things back out there, repeat, drive home at the end of the day in the car you turned up in, which doesn't look any worse for wear. I mean, Caterings are wonderful. They are brilliant. I had one, should never have sold it, should buy another one. They're just great. And because there are so many variations in specification, you could just pick the 7 that's right for you. I mean, this would be too extreme for me, but what a riot. What an absolute riot. Right, onwards to something a little quieter, I think. Like the apocalypse. Now, it feels slightly peculiar, doesn't it, to be wearing a crash helmet in a car like this? So elegant and graceful, but also, strangely, brand new. The RML SWB short wheelbase looks like a Ferrari 250 short wheelbase, doesn't it? Obviously isn't a Ferrari licensed product, but is a Ferrari underneath. So that V12 that it has sounds rather nice, doesn't it? It's a very relaxed road car, which means it's not a natural track car, but is worth exploring. So quite a lot of wind noise. This car is a prototype, so the seals are not exactly sorted. It's got a prototype interior as well, so don't judge the surroundings too much. But mechanically, it is almost there. So it's got very light steering. This big wheel probably helps make the steering lighter because it increases the lever. 6-speed manual gearbox. It's quite softly set up, and I quite like that. So the last car that RML engineered that I drove was a Nissan GTR that looked like a Nissan Duke. It was shortened. They made a few. I couldn't afford to buy one. I promised I would if they made them. It's just... There goes that wind noise. You'll just have to ignore it. We're doing 120 miles an hour. That's why it's there. That Duke was brilliantly engineered. This feels the same. It doesn't feel quite finished yet because it isn't. You can tell that there is quite a lot of ability in this car. They say it's the sort of car you should want to jump in. You'd be able to drive it cross country, cross continent in sort of comfort and enjoyment. It's got a nice balance. It is softly set up, so I'm getting quite a lot of lean, quite a lot of dive. There's quite a lot of squat as it comes back in. The traction control is off because it's a little bit harsh, and it's just really nicely balanced. Actually, it's a very classical sort of car. It's not the last word in handling control, body control, but it's a lovely classical kind of driving experience, modernized enough. And I think that's kind of the idea. And if you want it to move around a little bit, it will move around a little bit. It almost feels like it wants to be on narrower rubber, but the limits are quite approachable. But it almost feels like it should be on old-fashioned tyres so it moves around more easily. And the reason I mentioned earlier that the Ferrari 550 had won this tournament twice back in the old days. The old days, they still feel quite new to me, the 1990s, but there you go. Apparently it was quite a long time ago. This underneath is that. This underneath is that V12 front-engined rear-drive Ferrari that we loved so much back in the day. And in this new bodied form, well, I still love it. Still love it. I mean, with that little bit of wind noise and the production rather than prototype interior, you really could drive this car a lot. You need a lot of wedge to do it, £1.3 million, but it's a gorgeous thing. To drive, it is a glorious thing. Now, to look at, well, it's up to you. I love the shape of it. I think I'd love the shape of it more if I'd never seen a 250 short wheelbase.
So there you have it. That is positions 11 up to 6, with the top 5 following next week on this very channel. Stay tuned. Subscribe, and if you hit the notification icon, you will even be told when the video goes live. And remember, we are here every week with reviews. We're over at autocar.co.uk all the time. We have podcasts, we're on the social channels, and Autocar magazine is available either on digital subscription or in print, as it has been every week since 1895. See you next time.